There are phrases that don't hurt because of their content, but because of what they try to do to you. A jab in front of other people. Sarcasm disguised as a joke. A comment that seems small, but shoves your dignity into the corner. And the most curious thing is that often the problem isn't the phrase itself, it's the impulse it awakens in you. That urge to respond in the same tone, to prove you're not weak, to win the argument so you don't lose respect. But there's a hidden cost to winning with anger. You might manage to shut someone up for a few seconds, but inside you're still agitated for hours. Your mind keeps replaying the scene, imagining better responses, reliving the discomfort, feeding an internal courtroom. It's like the other person rang a doorbell and you ran to answer it without realizing the house was yours. And when you run like that, every time, you hand over control of your inner state to anyone who knows how to provoke. Stoicism doesn't come from a desire to shut other people up. It comes from a more demanding question. How not to be dominated by what doesn't depend on me. How to maintain composure without turning into a statue. How to preserve your own axis when the world tries to pull you out of yourself. Stoic wisdom isn't a manual for defeating people. It's a path for defeating what in you lets itself be captured by people. And here it's important to be honest. There are moments when a firm response is necessary. There is verbal abuse, humiliation, manipulation. There are environments where silence becomes permission for violence to grow. But the intelligent response, for the Stoic, isn't the one that hurts more. It's the one that ends the game. It's the one that returns responsibility to the aggressor without taking on the dirt of the provocation. It's the one that protects your integrity, not your pride. Most arguments don't happen because someone wants the truth. They happen because someone wants emotional release, wants to feel power, wants to test limits, wants to see if they can unbalance you. And when you respond on impulse, you step into the ring with the other's rules. You accept the provocation as if it were a legitimate invitation. You become a character in the play someone wrote to use you as an audience. The Stoic trains something else. Inner sovereignty. He learns to choose what deserves a response and what deserves silence. He learns to distinguish between what is fact and what is bait, between what is useful criticism and what is an attempt at control, between what requires a boundary and what requires indifference. And this completely changes the energy of a conversation, because most people don't know how to deal with someone who doesn't bite the bait. But this is where a lot of people confuse serenity with cowardice. If I don't respond, they'll think I lost. If I don't fight back, they'll walk all over me. If I don't put the person in their place, I'll be disrespected. These phrases are common, and they have some truth. The world respects those who respect themselves. But respect isn't built with explosions. It's built with clear boundaries, consistent posture, and coherent choices. A boundary stated calmly is usually much more unsettling for a provocateur than a shout. Because the shout shows they got in. The calm shows they stayed outside. What shuts anyone up in practice isn't a perfect phrase. It's the combination of presence and self-control. It's you responding without losing your center. It's you not over-explaining. It's you not needing to win to feel whole. There's something deeply disconcerting about someone who doesn't rush to defend their own image. Because the provocateur lives off image, they try to tarnish yours, precisely to clean theirs. When you don't enter that trade, they run out of raw material. And there's a psychological detail in this. A lot of provocation works because it touches a sensitive spot, a hidden insecurity, an old fear of being undervalued, a childhood wound sometimes. The other throws a phrase and suddenly you're not in the present anymore. You're trying to prove something to a memory. And that's why two people can hear the same comment and react in opposite ways. One laughs and moves on. The other ignites. The comment is the same. The trigger is different. Stoic wisdom is learning to notice the trigger before the explosion. It's noticing the change in the body, the chest tightening, the jaw clenching, the breathing shortening. It's recognizing the impulse of now I need to win, and in that instant choosing something else. Not out of passivity, but out of mastery, because true mastery isn't over the other. It's over your own impulse. When you master the impulse, you gain time. And when you gain time, you gain options. You can respond with firmness without insulting. You can set the boundary without humiliating. You can end the conversation without running away. You can even use a short, precise phrase that doesn't give a stage for the attack to continue. And that, yes, is intelligence, not giving the conflict more energy than it deserves. There's also the seduction of the perfect response. The person spends the day imagining how they could have said that, how they could have dismantled the other, how they could have been applauded. But real life isn't a courtroom, it's coexistence. And what keeps your mental health isn't the audience's applause. It's the tranquility of getting home and not hating yourself for losing control. The Stoic prefers to lose the show to gain peace. At the same time, this doesn't mean swallowing everything. It means choosing what enters and what doesn't. It means realizing that not every criticism deserves defense, not every provocation deserves a response, not every attack deserves explanation. Sometimes, explaining is kneeling, and there are people who provoke precisely to see you explain, because when you explain, you put yourself below. The intelligent response in those cases is short. It's clean. It's final. What you'll hear in this script are responses that don't depend on aggressiveness. Responses that work not because they're brilliant, but because they're aligned with a principle. I don't hand over my axis to someone who has no peace. I don't negotiate my dignity with someone who lives off conflict. I don't enter emotional games disguised as conversation. And above all, I don't use my mouth to lose my soul. Maybe today you're tired of having to deal with invasive, opinionated, sarcastic, passive-aggressive people. Tired of situations where you come out smaller than you went in. Tired of thinking, I should have responded. And at the same time, tired of responding and then regretting it. If you're at that point, the question that matters isn't, how do I shut the other up? The question is, how do I not lose myself from myself? Because when you don't lose yourself, something changes. The other can even speak, but doesn't command you. Can even try, but doesn't drag you. Can even provoke, but finds a wall without anger. And that kind of strength, calm, clear, non-negotiable, is exactly the strength that makes the noise die on its own. There's a moment in every provocation where the other's phrase hasn't yet turned into a fire inside you. It's a short interval, almost imperceptible, but decisive. The Stoic lives to expand that interval. Because that's where freedom lives. Before the automatic reaction, before the need to prove something, before turning a conversation into a ring. Most people lose that instant and call it sincerity. The Stoic calls it lack of inner governance. When someone tries to diminish you, the attack usually comes with a simple goal: to extract a reaction from you. It's not about the argument, it's about the energy. If you react with anger, you offer fuel. If you react with a long explanation, you offer a stage. If you react with sarcasm, you enter the same swamp. The intelligent response, in that sense, isn't the sharpest. It's the one that doesn't kidnap you. It's the one that keeps your dignity intact, without turning you into the kind of person you despise. There's a response that seems small, but dismantles a lot of hostility. Could be. Said calmly, without sarcasm, it's almost a mirror. The provocateur expects resistance, justification, fight. Upon hearing could be, they lose the script. Because the phrase neither agrees nor argues, it just refuses the war. In Stoic terms, this is refusing hasty assent. You're not accepting the offense as truth, nor denying it as if your identity depended on it. You're affirming a posture. I'm not obligated to turn every opinion into a battle. Another response that shuts up more through the silence it carries is, I understand. It's not submission, it's a way to end the offer of conflict. Many aggressive comments come loaded with a childish expectation. Prove me wrong, give me attention. When you say I understand and add nothing, you do something rare. You don't feed the other's emotional hunger, and at the same time you preserve your self-control. The person might insist, try to raise the tone, repeat, and then you realize what's happening. It's not conversation, it's provocation. The I understand works like a door closed without noise. In situations where the person accuses or attacks you in public, There's a response that protects your image without turning it into a spectacle. If there's something concrete, I'll talk in private. This changes the geometry of the environment. You take the confrontation off the stage and move it to the ground of responsibility. Whoever wants to humiliate hates this, because without an audience, the cruelty loses strength. And the Stoic understands something few understand. Public discussion rarely seeks truth. It seeks victory. By suggesting private, you signal maturity and prevent the show. You don't run away, but you also don't lend yourself to being a character in the other's comedy. There's also that provocation disguised as advice, which comes with poison and a smile. I'm just saying it for your own good. The Stoic response here needs to be short and firm. I accept advice when it comes with respect. This establishes a clear boundary without aggressiveness. Note the difference. You don't call the person toxic, you don't accuse, you don't shout. You define the standard. It's a response that puts the conversation on track. Either there's respect or there's no conversation. And this is extremely disconcerting for those who are used to crossing boundaries without consequence. In many environments, especially at work and in family, there's a type of attack that's not direct. It's sarcastic. The person makes jokes about you, throws jokes, pokes. If you complain, they say you're sensitive. If you laugh, you swallow it. The Stoic chooses the middle path. Explain better. What did you mean by that? This question, asked with serenity, forces the other to bring the intention into the light. Sarcasm lives in shadow. When you ask for clarity, the person faces a dilemma. Either back off or reveal what's hidden. And by asking for explanation, you don't lose your posture, you just refuse to participate in a cowardly game. Another powerful response is, I'll think about what you said. A lot of people think this is weakness, but it's mental discipline. You're not bowing, you're avoiding reacting in the heat. This phrase gives you back time, and time is power. Plus, it does something subtle. It shows you have control over your own judgment. The Stoic knows that no one is obligated to accept an opinion the instant it's thrown. Thinking is a right. And often, just the fact that you don't fight back right away already frustrates the other's intention, because the intention was to make you explode. In tougher situations, when someone insists on being aggressive, a boundary response ends the cycle without humiliating. I'm not going to continue this conversation in this tone. The tone here is essential. If you say it shouting, it becomes a challenge. If you say it calmly, it becomes a frontier. The strength is in sustaining the phrase with the same serenity as you would a decision. And if the person insists, you repeat, without raising the volume, without over-explaining. Calm repetition is one of the most civilized weapons there is. It communicates. I don't negotiate my center. Notice how these responses have something in common. They don't try to destroy the other. They try to preserve you. The provocateur wants to pull you onto their ground. Reactivity, pride, competition, humiliation. The Stoic chooses another ground. Clarity, boundary, self-control. This doesn't mean being passive. It means being selective. The question that guides these responses is simple. Does this deserve my energy? And even deeper, does this deserve me becoming someone smaller to win? And there's a detail that makes everything more effective. The body. A perfect response said with a tense body sounds like fear or anger. A simple response said with steady breathing sounds like authority. Before responding, the Stoic does, even if in milliseconds, an internal check. Relaxes the jaw, drops the shoulders, expands the air. Because the goal isn't just speaking right. It's not being invaded. It's not allowing the other to write your physiology. When you master the body, the words come out cleaner. Let's bring this to everyday situations, because that's where wisdom needs to work. Imagine someone saying, "You always complicate everything." The urge is to justify, list reasons, prove it's not like that. The Stoic response could be, "If there's a specific point, I'll listen." You don't accept the generalization, but you also don't enter the emotional game. You demand precision. Generalization is a manipulation weapon. Precision is a maturity tool. Imagine someone saying, "Wow, you're so sensitive." Instead of explaining yourself, you can say, "I'm being clear. This swap is simple, but powerful. You take the conversation out of judgment about your person and put it on the fact, I'm communicating. Whoever wants to diminish you calls your clarity sensitivity to invalidate what you said. You refuse the label and keep the message. Imagine a family member insisting on invasive opinions. I know what's best for you. A Stoic response, firm and human. I understand your intention, but the decision is mine. Without aggression, without sermon. Just a boundary. And if they insist, you don't argue the decision, you repeat the boundary. The Stoic doesn't get lost in endless debate because he understands that some people confuse insistence with right. What truly shuts the other up is when you don't hand over your emotions as currency. Because a lot of provocation is a trade. I provoke you, you give me your anger. I feel powerful. When you don't pay, the trade breaks. That's why sometimes the most intelligent response is a pause, a serene look, a short phrase, a dignified closure. It's not coldness. It's governance. And here comes the emotional maturity that a lot of people avoid, admitting that not every criticism is an attack. Some are useful. The Stoic doesn't turn into stone. He turns into a filter. If someone says something harsh, you can use "I'll think about what you said" as a sieve. If there's truth, you improve. If not, you discard. But you don't need to get hurt to evolve. You don't need to accept humiliation to mature. Virtue isn't allowing yourself to be mistreated. Virtue is not retaliating with malice and not losing sight of justice. At the core, these responses are less about shutting someone up and more about ending the dominance someone tries to exercise over your inner state. Stoicism here isn't a conversation trick. It's a posture toward life. I'm not obligated to react to everything. I choose. And when you choose, a lot loses the power to hurt you. An intelligent response isn't just what you say. It's what you refuse to give along with the phrase, your haste, your anger, your need for approval. Stoicism, when it comes down from the book to real life, becomes exactly that. The art of not handing over your peace as change. And that art doesn't appear when everything is calm. It appears when someone tries to push you off your axis, when the comment comes with poison, when the provocation arrives on a day when you were already at your limit. The first trap is thinking the value of the response is in the cleverness of the phrase. It's not. It's in the intention. If you respond to humiliate, you've already lost, even if the other shuts up, because you get used to winning by the same mechanism you hate in the other, hurting to feel superior. The Stoic chooses another victory, coming out whole. And coming out whole sometimes means responding little. Other times it means cutting the game with firmness. In both cases, the center is the same, not being governed. When you use could be, for example, a lot of people fear seeming weak. But the weakness here would be another, needing to convince. Could be is a way of not entering the cell the other is trying to build for you. Instead of trying to prove you're not that, you let the other's phrase die from lack of conflict. This response is especially useful when the criticism is vague, exaggerated, or emotionally charged, like, you always do everything wrong, or you're impossible. Absolute words want to trap you in a character. Could be refuses the character. And the decisive detail is the tone. If it comes with mockery, it becomes provocation. If it comes with calm, it becomes closure. I understand works on similar ground, but with another function. It closes the door without slamming. There are people who don't want a response, they want discussion. They want to keep you there spinning, justifying, defending your image, trying to be understood by someone who doesn't want to understand. I understand is like putting a period at the end of the paragraph the other wanted to stretch indefinitely. And the hardest part here is tolerating the discomfort that comes after, because the provocateur usually insists. They raise the tone, repeat, try to pull you back. The Stoic in those seconds does something that seems simple and is advanced. He endures the tension without resolving it with reaction. When you say, if there's something concrete, I'll talk in private, you change the scene. This phrase is almost a cleaning of the environment. It separates serious conversation from theater. It says, if it's important, we handle it with responsibility. If it's just provocation, no stage. This protects your dignity and protects the bond because it avoids the poison of public exposure. In family, at work, in groups, this kind of boundary is usually what prevents an abusive person from turning you into a target. And again, the strength is in not over-explaining. Long explanation turns into debate, and debate turns into spectacle. The Stoic doesn't give spectacle to what's low. The phrase "I accept advice when it comes with respect" is one of the hardest to sustain, because it requires you not to get angry while setting the frontier. It works well against the "I'm just saying it for your own good" that comes loaded with contempt. Instead of arguing the other's intention, you define the conversation's standard. You don't need to prove the other is malicious. You just affirm, "Here with me, respect is a requirement." This also serves for environments where people have the habit of teaching with humiliation. The phrase doesn't offend, but it also doesn't open space for aggression to disguise itself as virtue. "Already explained better. What did you mean by that?" has an almost surgical power against sarcasms and passive-aggressive attacks. Sarcasm lives on ambiguity. It wants to poke you and, at the same time, have an out. It was a joke. When you ask for clarity, you pull the aggressor out of the shadow and put them in front of their own intention. If they back off, great, the boundary worked. If they insist and reveal the cruelty, even better. Now it's clear what kind of conversation is happening, and you can decide if you stay. This question also has another effect. It slows down the pace, and slowing down is a way to recover dominance. Whoever provokes wants speed, wants impulse, wants explosion. The Stoic responds with calm and precision. "I'll think about what you said" is perhaps the most underestimated phrase. It's not just an elegant escape. It's a declaration of mental sovereignty. It says, "You don't have immediate access to my judgment. You can speak, but I choose when and how to consider." This is extremely powerful in relationships where the person tries to pressure you, whether with guilt, with authority, with urgency. Think of a common situation. Someone criticizes you and expects you to defend yourself right away so they can attack next. By saying, "I'll think," you interrupt the mechanism. You don't hand over the defense ready for the attack to continue. And in real life, many people are only aggressive while they perceive they can accelerate you. When you slow down, they lose control of the game. Finally, "I'm not going to continue this conversation in this tone," is the boundary that ends the conversation without needing to win. It's essential when the other has already crossed the line and the conversation turned into aggression. It's not a threat. It's a criterion. It works because you're not asking permission to be respected. You're informing what happens when respect ends. The conversation ends. And here there's a practical requirement. You need to be willing to follow through. If you say it and stay, the boundary loses weight. The Stoic understands that boundaries aren't speeches, they're coherent actions. Sometimes the act is to get up, leave, end the call, change the subject, keep silence. Not as punishment, but as self-preservation. Now, what really makes these responses shut up is what comes before them. The discipline of assent. In everyday life, this means realizing that the offense doesn't enter automatically. It only enters if you receive it as truth or as a personal challenge. A person can say something unfair, and that's external. What turns it into torment is the internal judgment. I can't let that go. I need to react. If I don't win, I lose value. The Stoic works to cut that hasty judgment. He doesn't pretend he didn't hear. He chooses what it means. And meaning is where freedom lives. There's also a point that few admit. Many bad responses happen because there's a secret desire to be admired. The person responds to stay on top, to be applauded, to seem clever. But life charges for that desire with anxiety, because whoever needs to be admired lives at risk. Any comment becomes a threat. The Stoic trades admiration for tranquility. He prefers to seem boring than to lose peace. And that, for a lot of people, is a silent revolution. And how to train this without turning life into an internal war. With a simple habit: review situations after they pass, but without torturing yourself. Ask, with honesty, did I react out of virtue or pride? Did I set a boundary or did I attack? Did I preserve myself or did I try to win? If I could go back, would I say less? Would I say more? Would I keep the tone? This review is a way to polish character. Not to become someone perfect, but to become someone freer. In real situations, a good Stoic rule is this: respond at the level of the fact, not at the level of the poison. If the person makes a poisonous comment about your competence, you don't respond to the poison with poison. You respond with criterion. If there's something specific, I'll evaluate. You demand concrete. Poison wants generalization, because generalization humiliates. Concrete forces responsibility. And responsibility is where the aggressor usually loses strength. Another rule: don't argue when your body is in combat mode. If you notice your body hot, heart racing, breathing short, the chance of saying something you'll regret is high. The intelligent response in those cases is to gain time. Sometimes with, "I'll think," sometimes with silence, sometimes with, "We'll talk later." This isn't running. It's not being governed by the physiological state. Emotional maturity is knowing that the body also votes in your speech. And if the body is disorganized, your words will come out crooked, even if your intention is good. And there's finally a change in vision that makes everything easier. Realizing that some people speak to relieve their own discomfort, not to describe you accurately. When someone dumps aggressiveness, often they're revealing their own chaos. This doesn't mean tolerating abuse. It means not taking everything as a diagnosis about you. The Stoic isn't naive, but he's also not hostage to others' opinions. He uses others' words as information, not as sentence. When you start living like this, something curious happens. Many provocations stop on their own, not because you became feared, but because you became useless for the game. The provocateur looks for reaction. You offer presence. Looks for confusion. You offer boundary. Looks for spectacle. You offer silence. And without fuel, the fire goes out. What makes a response truly intelligent isn't the shine of the phrase. It's the kind of person you decide to be in the moment someone tries to pull you down. Because at the core, the provocation is an invitation. An invitation for you to abandon your own discipline and enter the other's ground. Haste, pride, competition, humiliation. And Stoic wisdom teaches exactly the opposite. Don't outsource your center. Don't hand over your piece to the first person who shows up with an acidic tone. There's a silent relief when you realize this. You're not obligated to react. You're not obligated to prove. You're not obligated to be understood by those who don't want to understand. You can respond, yes, but respond from a different place. A place where your dignity doesn't depend on the other's silence. A place where you don't need to crush anyone to feel whole. The 7 responses we saw have a common thread. They end the game without you turning into a player. Could be cuts the need to win. I understand closes the door without noise. If there's something concrete, I'll talk in private. Takes the conversation off the stage. I accept advice when it comes with respect. Puts respect as a requirement. Explain better pulls the sarcasm out of the shadow. I'll think about what you said, gives time back to you. I'm not going to continue this conversation in this tone. Establishes a boundary that doesn't negotiate your own value. Notice how this is different from having the last word. The world is full of people who have the last word and lose the whole night. Full of people who win an argument and lose their own mood. Full of people who shut the other up in front of everyone, and then, alone, keep ruminating. The Stoic prefers a less visible and rarer victory. Sleeping in peace. Getting to the end of the day without feeling emotionally kidnapped by others' comments. And maybe that's the maturity that's most lacking today. Understanding that self-control isn't weakness. It's freedom. It's not swallowing everything. It's choosing what deserves your energy. It's realizing that some people only have power over you while they can accelerate you. While they can make you speak without thinking, act without choosing, react without noticing. When you slow down, you recover the wheel. In practice, this means learning to recognize the first signs in the body. The jaw that clenches, the chest that heats up, the breathing that shortens. That's the moment life offers you 2 versions of yourself. The old version that reacts to protect itself from discomfort, and the mature version that sustains the discomfort without becoming aggressive. This second path isn't passive, it's conscious. It's the point where you realize you don't need to win to respect yourself. It also means learning to differentiate useful criticism from provocation. Useful criticism has content, has specificity, has intention to improve. Provocation has poison, has generalization, has intention to hurt. The wise response doesn't treat the two as equals. It doesn't defend against everything, nor swallow everything. It filters. And filtering is a form of wisdom because it prevents you from living at war with the world, and at the same time prevents you from living without boundaries. Keep one single idea. Your peace isn't a prize others give you when they behave well. Your peace is internal work, and that work starts when you stop responding to be admired, to be feared, to be applauded, to be the smartest. It starts when you respond to be faithful to your own character. Because in the end, what remains isn't the one argument. It's who you became while arguing. And that's where life changes tone. You start speaking less, and with more precision. Start explaining less, and with more firmness. Start leaving conversations that degrade you without guilt. Start realizing that some people don't need to be defeated. They just need not to be fed. And, little by little, you discover something liberating. You don't need to shut anyone's mouth. You just need not to allow anyone to direct your soul. Help us by supporting the channel, like the video. Share it with someone who always regrets what they say in the heat of the moment. Leave in the comments which of these responses you most need to practice in your daily life, and subscribe to keep receiving Stoic reflections applied to real life with serenity, clarity, and purpose.